With no other announcements, I do want to introduce tonight's speaker, Pat Rundall, N0HR, Meister of all things POTA, our Vice President of SCARC this year, and an intrepid POTA, oops, helps if I unmute the right mic, intrepid POTA adventurer. And welcome Pat, N0HR, to teach us about the fun that he's having with Parks on the Air.
Yeah. So this is
that's the clicker.
The clicker.
Just forward, reverse, and
right.
The green button there gets you a dot.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Paul. And by the way, I want to once again thank Paul for all of his work setting this stuff up every month. I mean, he does a great job of keeping it going for us. So, yeah, just thinking about tonight's talk, I think it would be great to introduce anybody to POTA that's not been exposed to POTA. Maybe everyone's had some level of exposure to POTA, but you'd like to learn a little bit more, pick up a tip or a trick along the way, or just hear a interesting story about it. So we'll touch on all of that. Hopefully there's something for everybody tonight. Just to get going, anybody recognize which park this is? That is Ledges, yeah. That's that far rim that you don't ever get to. This is the south rim of the Grand Canyon. And so I'm just a few feet away there from the ledge. And that's a little wire antenna. And, you know, I've got my equipment set up over here so you can check it out too later if we have time. But very simple setup, threw it in a bag that went on an airplane, went on a business trip, went to the Grand Canyon along the way with my wife, Lynn, here. And wanted to make sure if I did a POTA activation and made contacts from all places, why not the Grand Canyon? So that was a little bit of the Grand Canyon story. But I thought, kind of to get going, see if the clicker, where do I aim?
You just click it.
I can just, oh. There, I had to click within the meeting to do it. So, all right. So just as a thought to get going, here's my thought for the night. What do you consider to be your adventure in ham radio? And the reason I ask that is because if you look at ham radio as a little bit of an adventure, I think it will really change your perspective on the hobby, your enjoyment with the hobby. You'll just have a different kind of a takeaway. And I know that was the case for me. So there's certainly people, you know, that are the hobby to them is getting on every day and talking to the same 5 guys that the next day they talk to them again and they're sharing what their doctor told them last night or whatever. And I think if you look at ham radio as a little bit of an adventure, see a challenge in whatever that next objective is, you'll just get a different perspective and level of enjoyment out of the hobby. So that's my question. And I think to unpack that as we go through, you'll see how I kind of saw POTA as a next adventure for me and where I went with that. So kind of getting into it, maybe you're wondering, if you don't know me, who is this guy? So I am N0HR. I was licensed in 1980 at the age of 12. So if you're good with math, you can figure out how old I am, Juan. Yeah, 1980 at the age of 12. So as a 12-year-old at that time in 1980, you had to know Morse code in order to get a license. So, yeah. There you go. What month? Okay, you beat me by a few months. Yeah, so that, you know, at the time, there were a bunch of guys that were a lot older than us that were on the air and talking to their buddies and using sideband, and that was fine, but I really didn't have a lot in common with them or a lot that I could really talk about. So for me, I found an appreciation for Morse code really early on, and I could have a conversation with somebody. They would have no clue how old I was, what kind of an accent I had. They wouldn't recognize that I had the voice of a 12-year-old. And so it was kind of fun. In fact, I made several contacts with one guy who was in the UK, and because of the way the bands worked, he was on sideband and I was on CW. And so we went cross mode for several nights in a row. But anyway, kind of had some fun adventures with my dad's gear in 1980. I'm primarily an HF operator. I probably have a VHF handy talkie somewhere that's maybe the battery's charged. I don't know, but mostly you're going to find me on HF, and mostly, but not exclusively, on CW. So if I look back at all my contacts over the years, I probably actually have about as many sideband contacts as I do CW, and a significant number of digital contacts as well, mostly RIDI, and most of all of that by quantity comes from contesting. So did quite a bit of DXing and contesting through the years. But I could probably say I also like to do some experimentation. One of my early passions was tweaking antennas and trying to figure out what worked with antennas and what didn't work. And when I went off to go to college at Iowa State, I thought I'm going to walk away with a degree and become an antenna designer someday for somebody. And didn't do that. But through the years, found POTA then to be something that kind of re-energized me with the hobby. So that's a story that's super common. People that have stepped away from the hobby for a few years, become a little bit less active, and then sort of discover POTA and get really enthusiastic and energized by it and kind of jump back into the hobby through POTA. So that my story there is not that uncommon. I have a double E degree and an MBA, which means I work in West Des Moines at a financial services company, and I have an XYL and one harmonic. You guys all know what that means, right? Okay. I don't know if everybody knows, but so my wife is here, Lynn, and our harmonic's a sophomore at Iowa State. So my POTA adventure, I'd say began. I actually have a video I made of this as I was driving to the site. But basically, the SCARC in the park outing in I think it's April of 2022, last year, was really my first chance to do anything with POTA. So the club had set up out at Ledges. We had the banner out front, and I just, brought some gear that I threw together and got in there, and it was pretty chilly. And I think we had a fire going that day, but made some contacts and just had a blast and said, okay, I'm going to maybe dabble a little bit more in this. So I really do credit the club and SCARC in the park as a great way to get people, interested in kicking their tires on POTA. So kudos to the club for pursuing that. So if you're not too familiar with POTA, what is it? So it's one way to think of it is there's a network of parks and other entities that are sprinkled throughout the country, that a POTA activator, we call them, would go to one of these sites and make contacts. And there are those people who hunt those activators. So they try to make as many contacts with those who are in parks as possible. And the people that are in the parks, they just try to make contacts and have a good time. There's a whole award program and all that other stuff. We'll get into that in a minute. But for the moment, this is what the park network looks like for the state of Iowa. So there are at the moment about 161 parks or entities in Iowa. These are made up of state parks, a few national entities, but mostly Iowa DNR locations that are on public land that's either state-owned or federally owned land. County parks do not count for POTA. They do not. They decided, so the history of POTA, it stems from, in 2016 was the 100th anniversary of the National Park System, and the ARRL decided to do this National Parks celebration, and so they started the National Parks POTA system, Parks on the Air award program and all of that. At the end of that year, the ARRL said, we don't have the resources to keep messing with this, so we're kind of done with our 100th year anniversary, and and they were done with it. Well, a few folks had so much fun doing it, they said, we're going to take it on and take it to the next level. So POTA sprang up out of volunteers who took that challenge on to keep it going, so to speak. One of the things, just because of you don't have infinite resources, so one of the things they said was county parks and kind of lower city parks are not going to count for the system. It's just too much work. There are too many of them to get into the system and to manage. So kind of kept it at that level. You know, a lot of those county parks and city parks and smaller parks would be really hard to find the maps and boundaries and where are they at and what hours are they available. So they stuck with that. So this is Iowa. If you look at there's blue dots and yellow dots. I don't know how well you see that. The blue dots are the parks that I've gone to and done an activation at since April of last year. So I'm up to 115 out of 161 in Iowa. Yeah, that's a lot of miles on my wife's car. And the red blob that's up in northwest Iowa that's circled there. So that was an activation, I don't know, last weekend or the weekend before. So went up around, that's Okoboji and a few places up there. So that's kind of my, you know, I'll go do the parks around here and sometimes on the way home from work or sometimes over a lunch hour or whatever if something's local. But to go do some of these more remote ones takes a little bit more planning. You got to leave earlier, you know, to get up to Okoboji from here is 2.5 hour drive or something like that. So, so it just takes more time and planning to pull some of those off. Sometimes it's a hotel trip as well. So they are. Everything that's on the map that I highlighted is in Iowa and I excluded everything else. It is. Yep. It is right across the river. Yep. I think that must be Minnesota. I recognize most of the Iowa state park names and I don't recognize that one. So yeah, these are actually right at the very top one is just right across the river from South Dakota. It's probably closer to South Dakota than it is. There's a park in South Dakota called Good Earth, and the one that's across the river there is called Blood Run, and it's Native American historical site and archaeology goes on there and that kind of thing. So that's that top one. State-wise, since starting last spring, summer, now have done activations in 33 states. So this kind of began after we went to Ledges and did this Skark in the Park event. And then our daughter was going to a camp in Georgia, and we wound up driving there to go take her back or see her or something, and said, well, let's take some gear in the car and just in case, you know, we come across a park. So stopped along parks along the way and managed to get activations in at a lot of those states. And our daughter, the next semester, last fall, you know, a year ago now, she worked in Florida at Disney in Orlando. So we made a driving trip to drive all of her stuff back when she got done with that. And along the way, we kind of swung through the South and picked up some states that we wouldn't have normally, if I'm honest, had a real good reason to go. You know, for us, Mississippi's not really a vacation spot, destination, but we saw Vicksburg National Battlefield and did a POTA activation there. So it kind of gave us a reason to go explore places that we wouldn't have normally been able to go check out. You know, a business trip helped us knock out a lot of stuff in the Southwest. And then we actually got a bargain on a flight from Denver. And so we flew out to Portland and then drove to Denver and knocked out the Northwest. And so just little things like that have allowed us to kind of knock the rest of or keep chipping away at our state count. So again, what is POTA? POTA is the Parks on the Air program, and it encourages communications with portable operators who happen to be located in national, state, and country parks and public lands. So some countries don't have the concept of a state park or a national park, but they have their, you know, their country of Greece park. And so so there's some other countries that are involved, not just the US. And it's really starting to take off now beyond the US. A lot of the European countries are starting to pick up on POTA and Japanese as well. Should also mention that POTA can be also thought of as, it's a big nonprofit organization run by a bunch of volunteers who do things like keep the mapping database up to date and the awards program and the database and all of that stuff. And it's also now thousands of parks across the world. I thought as I gave this talk tonight, I've had enough in all of these trips over the past 15, 16, 18 months that we've been doing it, just quirky, weird stories. And so I thought I'd sprinkle a few of those in along the way. So I was going to try to, on one Saturday, driving around this past summer, knock out a park in Northwest Iowa. And I was trying to drive through this town of Tripoli, Iowa, and a real small town. And they turned out all the roads were blocked off and they were having some festival. And so I thought, well, I got to get to my park. I'm trying to do this rove and hit all these parks. And so I was trying to find a way around the town. I wound up kind of being trapped within the town. And it turned out they're having a parade. There were police blocking off roads. Well, I don't know how it happened, but somehow I wound up in the parade. So I'm lined up behind a bunch of tractors. What's that? Oh, sorry. It is Northeast Iowa. I meant Northeast Iowa. You're right. Oh, really? Okay. Well, I don't think I'm invited back anyway, because I joined the parade. Little kids are waving at me and I didn't have anything to throw. Yeah, that's one of them cars from the future. So yeah, that's my parade story. So what is POTA in terms of hunting? So if you're at home and trying to make contacts with somebody who's out doing POTA, you may hear this term hunting, and that just means they're trying to make contacts with people who are in parks. So that's any mode, but you're trying to make contacts with somebody who's activating a park, or they're in a park making contacts. So POTA or hunting's a term that you'll hear. Why do it? Well, one reason is you can collect some awards. And once you get into the system, so you set up an account, you make some contacts, the person doing the park activation who's at the park will then upload his or her log to the system. And once you've made enough contacts, you'll start collecting these awards, which are little, you can download PDF files, but print them out if you want to, but they're little images that show that you've made enough contacts, or you've reached some milestone in making contacts in the system. Those who are hunting don't need to upload a log or do anything else. You just go make the contacts. Everybody else does the work. You just have to have an account in the system, which is free. And yeah, you don't need to submit a log. Just get an account. So that's hunting. One other tip with hunting is their system keeps track of database. They're called spots, but these are people who are currently out making contacts from a park somewhere. And if I wanted to see, wow, here's this park in Utah, or this one's in Japan, or if I wanted to make a contact with one of these, it's got the mode, it's got the frequency, it's got all the details you need so that you'll know, okay, this person's on the air. I can go make a contact with somebody in that park right now. So it kind of, it's like your, to borrow a fishing analogy, this is your fish finder that's helping you go find where the fish are. It's all on the internet and tied to the system, so it's pretty slick. Yeah, kind of high level surface question, why get involved in POTA to begin with? First of all, it's incredibly fun. I think those of you, if you tipped your toe in, dabbled a little bit in POTA, would probably agree. It's a lot of fun, even if you're just at home making contacts with guys who are out doing it. It's extremely easy. There's people who were like me when I was 12 years old trying to make contacts with people, and some days it's just really hard to make a contact because hardly anybody on the air. Well, now There's a lot more activity on the bands around POTA, and it's just made it a lot easier. If I just simply want to make a contact with not a very fancy station, I can make a contact. It's across most modes. So if you're somebody who's into the digital modes or CW or sideband or whatever your mode of choice is, pretty much you can find somebody doing something with POTA there. I mentioned the increased activity, which is fantastic. There's people who literally are going for awards that are tied to making a contact from a park every day of the year. So there's an award available for somebody that makes a contact 365 days in a year, every consecutive day from a park. Likewise, there's a kind of a reciprocal award for somebody who makes a contact with an activator, a hunter version of that. POTA is a great way to figure out if your station is actually working very well. One thing that's a little bit unique to POTA, as a guy coming from the contesting world and DXing world, in contesting and DXing field day, when you make a contact with someone, what's the signal report you always hear back? Everybody's 5'9", right? 5'9", you're 5'9", you're 5'9". In POTA, usually somebody will give you an honest report of your signal. So you know if you're really getting out, or is that guy just being nice by giving you a 5'9". Finally, the POTA community is really a friendly group, very welcoming. If you've got questions, there's online communities that you can go to and they can help you navigate, how to do POTA better, how to tweak something with your station. There's no shortage of advice from the POTA community if you have a question. Time for another story. So this is Bixby State Preserve. Has anybody ever been to Bixby State Preserve? No? You know where it's at? It's right there. Yes. Yeah, so that's also northeast Iowa. It's really small. It's not a very big park at all. So my wife and I think, yeah, you were with me, and we go to this place, and it was a Saturday, beautiful day, and we wind up kind of trying to do a lot of the northeast Iowa parks, and we go to this little place, and here's what it looked like when we got in. They were all set. I mean, there is nowhere else to go in this park because it's so small. But all the chairs were set up clearly for a wedding. And it's like noon. And there's some people that are getting ready for the wedding there. And I'm carrying my equipment in, and that's like the only picnic table available. And so I'm like, oh, am I going to be able to get away with this? And so I started setting up. And I think there was somebody there who said, yeah, I'd go ahead and use it. But we didn't know, was that just a guy just saying whatever? So we went ahead and activated, but I don't think I ever had a backdrop like that. That was kind of a unique backdrop, just to have that wedding set up for a activation. We got out of there before the bride showed up, so we were good. Yeah, that or the bride's mom. So. So just again, real quick, how to join POTA. I won't go through all the details here, but just to let you know, it's as simple as logging into the site, and you can go set up an account. If you want to, you don't have to, but you can just use your Facebook account or your Amazon account or your Google account. Basically, they put those other ways to do it in there so that if you're worried about your password being hijacked or whatever, you're logging in through one of those other systems, not through the POTA system with some volunteer running the passwords. But so again, they make it really easy and user-friendly. Next story. This is Whitrock Indian Village State Preserve. So that's in northwest Iowa. It used to be called Indian Village State Park. It's actually pretty hard to find. So of all of the 161 Iowa parks, there's less than 5 that require you to hike in. Like there's no way to drive your car into it. So this is a roadside sign. And in order to get to the location, You can almost see a mowed trail off there to the far left. So about 3/4 of a mile, close to a mile down that trail is where you had to go. So I carried basically the stuff you see on the table over here. So one of these plastic kind of Tupperware totes, battery, radio, antenna, laptop. It's not the most portable station ever, and that's on me. I should have done a little bit more research and taken my QRP radio, which is that little suitcase that's on top there. Very small, compact, lightweight system. You know, I didn't need the big battery and all the other stuff. So all of this to say, one, do your research before you go. And I probably didn't have enough water with me when I walked out there. And I mean, it was a hot day and a long walk. So do your research and make sure you have the right radio and equipment for kind of the mission at hand. If you're going to have to go on a hike, make sure that you're prepared to go on a hike. That was the big takeaway for me. Okay, the other side of the coin, we talked about hunting a minute ago. We're going to jump into activating. Sorry if I'm going fast. I only have like 6 hours worth of slides that I compressed into 45 minutes or so. This is activating. So activating is the concept of going to one of these parks and just making contacts. And you can make as many or as few as you'd like. If you happen to make 10, then they say, oh, that's an activation. And they, you know, ramp up a counter that you've done another activation, but you don't have to make 10. It's not a big deal. Kind of the how-to that I'll put together here is, first of all, preparation. Make sure that you're well prepared. So that involves first finding a park. You can go to the mapping system that's in the website and it will zoom right in on your location and you can click on your local park. So you can see here in the Ames area, we've got Big Creek, we've got Ledges, Harrier Marsh is just south of Ogden, a cluster of random parks you don't really want to go to north of Boone, a new one that's added north of kind of northwest of Story City. That's a postage stamp little wildlife management area. Bob Pyle. Yeah. Hendrickson Marsh over by Colo. Oh no, that's over by Colo. This is Colo Boggs. Colo Boggs is a new one. And then really one of my favorite parks of all the ones that I've been to is Big Creek. Big Creek just makes it easy to do POTA. They've got great little pavilions and kind of shelters to do your activations in. You can choose to be close to the beach and see the lake and all the stuff going on, or you can be kind of tucked away in a kind of a wooded area if you want to. So, and it's on my way home from work, so it makes it really nice. So that's Big Creek. I've done 70 activations at Big Creek, just kind of back and forth. Yeah, so find a park, do your research. We talked about that. The website has a link with, if you're in Iowa, a link with the map and all the information you need for that particular park. So make sure you click on that link to get the details. Don't rely on Google Maps to tell you if you're within the boundaries of the park or any other system. Always go to the website link, and the official, like Iowa DNR, for example, site will tell you if you're within the boundaries of that entity. It will also have important information like the hours that that park is open. So Big Creek, for example, is only open till 10:30. So it will tell me don't be there past 10:30 at night. And then there's a description down there that will tell you if you're going to go activate, you know, the details of doing your activation as well. If you're interested, there's all the park leader stuff down there about who's made the most contacts with that park and so on. Oh, you can also schedule an activation. So before you go to the park, you can go into the system and say on November 3rd, I will be at this park from this time to this time, have it pre-entered into the system so that when you get on the air, if people miss hearing what your park number is, or you don't send it, they can look it up in the system, and you'll typically get spotted then, and they'll always make that connection that, oh, you're activating and I heard you, but you're really at this park because the system tells me you're at this park. So with that, I'd say get out and activate. Really, it's as simple as calling CQ POTA, making some contacts, log them, and be sure to record also what that park reference number is. So Big Creek is Kilo 2281, and the time for every contact. So your log that gets uploaded should always have at least those two things in there, along with the call of the person you're working. So every entry should have the person you're working, the timestamp, and the park number as kind of the minimum, and then upload your log to the system. Oh, next story. Anybody recognize this park? That's Death Valley. Yeah. So this was in April, went to the Southwest on a business trip, and when same trip we drove over to, so for work I had to go to Las Vegas, and I don't know about you, but if I'm going to Las Vegas, I don't really want to spend time in Las Vegas. It's not my favorite place. So we went to Death Valley, and we went to Zion National Park in Utah and Grand Canyon, and abused rental car. What? Oh, Lake Mead in Nevada. Yeah, and a couple other Nevada places. So, it's like 100 degrees out, and I think there's one point that's 200 feet below sea level. So, but thought we got to do an activation while we're there. I mean, Death Valley was really cool. If you've never been to Death Valley and you think, why would I go to Death Valley? Take time to go to Death Valley if you're ever in that part of California, because it turned out to be a really cool park that really surprised us. So that's kind of another little surprise along the way. But had to go out and set up the antenna, get the radios going. I wound up activating from the back seat of the car with the air conditioner on full blast. But we got the activation in. So, and we survived an activation in Death Valley. So for all of you who have a small, simple ham shack in your house, you might wonder, why would I ever consider, I got the heat and the air conditioning, and I got all the comforts of being at home. Why would I ever go out to a park? This is a few things to consider here. One, your noise floor at some locations is going to be really low. So if you at your house have you turn the radio on, you don't even have to plug in the antenna, and you hear static all the time, or all kinds of noise from your neighbors' LED lights and their plasma TVs and all this other stuff, city life can be kind of hard to deal with that kind of stuff. Going to some of these parks, believe me, in Death Valley, the noise floor is really low because there isn't any people. So it's about perfect. It's a great way to improve your operating skills. Man, if you do enough of these activations, if you think I'm a little clumsy when it comes to field day, but go do a few of these POTA activations, and by next field day, you'll be a much better operator. Your just operating skills in any mode will improve. So that's something to consider. It's a great test of your gear, and something to do more often than just once a year at field day. I know a lot of guys that the only time you ever really take some of your equipment out of the house is when it's field day, and you throw it all in the back of the car and you drive someplace and do field day, and that's fine. This is a great way to make sure that your stuff's all actually working, rather than get to your field day site and find out that it's not working. So it's also, in terms of your gear, it's a good way to get to know your receiver's capabilities. When you're activating a park, you become the hunted. You have all these hunters who are trying to make contacts with you. That can overload your receiver, and overwhelm your receiver. And so your ability to get the filters tuned in, and to get so that you can efficiently work a lot of stations in a pileup that are all trying to hit you at the same time, your ability to manage a good receiver will really come into play there. It's a good way to figure out if you have the capability to do field power, emergency power, what really capabilities you're going to have. Before I started doing a lot of POTA, I had batteries and stuff, but I wasn't really going out and using them actively to know how many hours could I be on the air with this radio in this mode. How long is that battery going to last? Man, I've got a lot better view of that now. Antennas, certainly it's a great way to figure out which antennas work and which don't. If you're kind of an antenna nerd, you're going to get a chance, if you'd like to experiment with different antennas and figure out, okay, I read an article in QST about this new antenna, but when you go out to the field and actually see how it performs versus other antennas, you'll quickly kind of land on which ones are your favorites and which ones are more hype than they are practical. Being able to manage a pile up and get your QSO rate up quick, like kind of like contesting mode or DXing mode. And there's really not another good simulation of high rate ham radio that I know of, apart from contesting, DXing, and now POTA. And finally, it's a great chance to explore some just beautiful parks and take you on some unexpected adventures. And that's been our case. I mean, we've just been, if we're honest, we probably have seen way more national parks, state parks, little wildlife management areas that we would not have expected to run into had it not been for POTA. And so you can go on some of those adventures as well. So let me take you to my next story here along those lines. Probably nobody recognizes this park. It is Yellowstone. Oh, that's right. That's right. And we probably talked about this one, but okay. Yeah, it is. It's Yellowstone. So if you come into Yellowstone from the far west entrance, you're actually coming in from Montana. And as you enter the park, you're not in Wyoming. You're in, you're right about here. That little sliver that's between, all of this is Wyoming. It's that little sliver of Montana is within the park. And I thought, okay, if we're in that part of the country, I need to activate Montana sometime so I can check Montana off my list. So let's go try to do that. That's the Madison River behind me, and a lot of fly fishing guys were out there fishing. It was just us and a couple folks fishing, and that was it. So I sat down and proceeded to put Montana on the air as a part of Yellowstone with that activation. We're there for, I don't know, half hour, and we probably wanted to get going and get on and see more of Yellowstone and get on to the next thing. So it wasn't a terribly lengthy activation. And so just thought, okay, it's time to pack up. I think I certainly got my 10 in, my qualify for my activation. I can go on to the next thing. And so I sent QRT to tell everybody, okay, I'm shutting down now. Just as I sent QRT, I hear WB0RMN. WB0RMN is Larry Stover, who's originally from Marshalltown. He lives in Michigan now. He's the guy that got me my license when I was 12 years old. And I had never talked to him before on the radio. He had learned through Facebook that I was doing this POTA thing. And he asked me one time, he said, I kind of looked for you a few times, I can never find you. So I told him how to set up the spotting app on his phone so that if I ever got picked up on the reverse beacon network for the CW operators, his phone would buzz him and tell him that I was on the air. So he just threw his call out just as I was getting ready to shut off the rig. And so I worked Larry. Larry's probably about 90 now. I mean, he's got to be late 80s. But just a super nice guy. And so for me, that was one of those special things that was very, very unexpected, but what a cool moment that was to find Larry on the air. So yeah. A few tips about activating, if you're thinking about activating. First is that some parks are really tricky in terms of what is their boundaries. Am I in the park, out of the park? This parking lot might be in or maybe not. So I can't emphasize enough, do your research before you head out and hopefully make sure you can read a map. I've actually had people, being the Iowa mapping coordinator for POTA. I've had people call me. I had a guy call me at the dinner table a few weeks ago asking questions. What's in the park? What's out of the park? How do I know? And so, yeah, just do your research. Make sure you check those notes before you go. Another tip, when you're first starting to do POTA, is try to start slowly. So go find a local state park. Big Creek would be a perfect example. It's close. Consider starting out with low power, QRP. And the reason I suggest this is because you will have fewer people come back to you when you call CQ, which means the pileup is much easier to work if you're just getting started. If you're an expert operator and you've had hundreds of activations and you're very comfortable running the chaos that comes in a pileup, then go ahead and use a kilowatt and a big antenna, and you'll get that wall of sound coming at you when you make a contact. But when you're getting started, the QRP is actually a good thing. And if you don't have hardly anybody coming back to you, go ahead and turn the power up a little bit. That's fine. But if you start down at 5 or 10 watts to get going and kind of ease your way into more and more power, it means more and more people coming back to you. Perfect way to get going. Also, watch a YouTube video on whatever your mode of choice is. So if you're a sideband operator, go watch somebody else do a sideband operation on YouTube before you go out. Same with CW or digital, same thing. There's tons of videos out there. Another tip is organize your gear before you go. The last thing you want to be doing is searching through bags and your trunk and not finding that one magic connector you need that makes this one adapter go from your coax to your rig. And so just organize your gear, and also have backup equipment. Yeah, sometimes you may have a simple little cable go out. You don't want to drive 500 miles just to find that one little cable is just shot your whole mission. So have some backup equipment. Paul. Yeah. A lot of times some of these entities are surrounded by private land. And as operators, we certainly don't want to be the reason that the Park Service or the DNR or whoever says, all right, no more POTA, because we're getting yelled at because these radio guys keep going at the wrong spot to do their operations. So, so that's part of it. I think, what other things come to mind?
Well, the big one for me, I think, is really recognizing that per the POTA rules, as an activator, you and all of your equipment, your entire station, have to be located inside the boundaries of the park.
Right.
So close enough is not good enough.
Yeah.
Operating from a parking lot that is across the street doesn't count.
Yeah. You
need to be physically within. You could set up next to the sign, for example, at was it Whitrock, the Indian Village?
Yeah.
But you're not within the boundaries of that.
I'm not in the entity.
You're not there.
Right.
And so you have to hike back into some of those. And so recognizing where those boundaries are is very important for this particular program, because you have to be fully within the boundaries of that entity.
Yeah. So that's a good point. The only exception, and this is a quirky exception, is the trails. So there's like the Lewis and Clark Trail, which goes, among other places, like along the Missouri River. If you want to activate that national trail, you don't have to be in a boat in the river and to be right on the line, because it's just a line. So they say plus or minus 100 feet or something like that for the trails. But otherwise, Paul's right. You got to be with all of your gear, all of your stuff within the bounds of the park. Okay, this is Zion National Park. So beautiful park. And I also took pictures of waterfalls and all the pretty stuff, but mostly I wanted to get pictures of myself and my gear. I've got lots and lots of pictures of me and my radio. But that's Zion. Zion's a nice park. Which brings up, where can I operate POTA? If you need to find out where to go for POTA, you can go to the listing of, oh, there's the line, entities that are listed on POTA.app website. So that's the website address to go find out where all of these things are at, POTA.app. That's where you find the maps. There's even a big listing you can go to on one of the menus that'll pull up all the listings for Iowa, and you can click through those and see for all the Iowa ones, for example, how many activations there have been, how many QSOs have been made, all that data is there if you're interested in looking at the data. The entities that are in this database are updated by mapping reps. So if you have a problem, you can go find out who the mapping rep is for Iowa. So I'm the one for Iowa, and you can go say, hey, Pat, go update, you know, the boundaries for Big Creek or whatever needs to be updated. You can let me know. I lean on Clint and Paul a lot for that, but Clint has, they give me trouble. Yeah. So the key point here, so this is back to the earlier question, what can become a POTA entity? Well, it must be on federal or state controlled land. There are some restrictions, such as Army Corps of Engineering has said no POTA. So the grounds that are along the Des Moines River, the Saylorville wildlife area, most of it is Army Corps of Engineering land, so that will never become a POTA site. But it's public hunting ground, so people say, well, it looks like it should be, but it can't be. Oh, office update. Oh, that's another good tip. I've started doing POTA activations before, and suddenly Windows decides it's a great time for an update. So we might as well just update the laptop, and that's horribly inconvenient. So yeah, DNR grounds are another example of entities. But again, the land must be state or federally owned, not private land. Sometimes there's private land that's DNR. It is, but it's excluded from POTA. Specifically excluded. Yep. Yep.
Piece of land, but unfortunately, it's Corps of Engineers land.
Yep.
That'd be perfect place.
Yeah.
Use the dam as a reflector and.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a long story that they're really not making public about meetings between POTA reps and the National Corps of Engineers guys, but yeah, that's the case. No county or city parks. Oh, but if you say, wow, I'm really interested in POTA and I've got a great city park around the corner, what about that? I'd say that's a great place to go set up and hunt POTA. Just like you're at home, but you can go, you know, make contacts with guys who are out doing activations. When I get there, where can I activate? Well, there's cabins or yurts. Has anybody ever rented a yurt? I didn't think so. Campgrounds, parks, shelters, picnic tables are great. That's kind of my primary mode, is to go find a picnic table somewhere. So I'm not sitting on the ground or having to drag a lawn chair with me. I love finding a good picnic table tucked away. You can sit in your vehicle in the parking lot and operate mobile from a POTA entity. You can do hiking or biking or whatever your own, you know, backpack setup is totally fine. Quick story, this is Dolliver State Park, which is Juan's neck of the woods, right? Yeah. So last year for Iowa QSO Party, I rented the lodge at Dolliver State Park and set up 2 stations. So it was just me by myself, but I had 2 stations, one on one band, one on another band, one on one antenna, one on another antenna, and activated in the Iowa QSO Party. So it's a contest that I did, and I happened to be at a POTA park, so I could upload when I was finished my contest log to the contest and my POTA log to the POTA people, and sort of double dip in the fun. So for me, that was fun. Terrible spot. Don't rent that lodge though. It's way down in a valley. Yeah. When can I activate POTA? Anytime the park allows it. So it can be during field day, it can be during a contest or the Iowa QSO party. Those are all fine. During the last Iowa QSO party, that's my setup operating out of the back of my wife's car at Harrier Marsh near Ogden. So was that the ticks? I did not have any ticks.
Mike loves that place for ticks.
Ticks. I've been there quite a few times and never had any ticks. But so here's another one of my hangout spots. It is Walnut Grove. Paul knows his parks. Yeah. So this is Walnut Grove is on the south side of Des Moines, not too far from the airport. So you're kind of off one of the runways. It can get a little bit loud depending on which runways they're using at the time. But this is just along the river there. The other gotcha with that park, there's a nice lodge there that I've used a few times. If I'm carrying my gear out to a picnic table where that table is along the river, there's walnut trees with Walnut Grove. And man, it is an ankle twister. If you step on one of those walnuts just wrong, ugh. Yeah, so that's a gotcha with Walnut Grove. But you're right, beautiful park and only about 8 miles from my office. So to be able to, over my lunch hour, hop in the car, drive down, grab a sandwich, sit on the bank of the river and knock out an activation and hop back in the car and get back to work within an hour. Great fun. All right, we're going to talk for a minute about the anatomy of a CW POTA QSO. How many people are CW operators? I know, so if you don't know Phil, Phil is a friend of mine, KF0AX, and I've worked Phil a few times on POTA on CW. Anybody else CW operators here? I know Bill is. Okay, so good. What's your call? AAE? Okay. I'm trying to introduce more people to CW. That's one of my passions. And one of the things that I found actually is I've kind of, do you happen to be on the POTA CW operators? You're a contester. There's a POTA Discord for CW operators. And there's a bunch of younger guys who are in their 20s and 30s that are getting into it and that have learned CW within the last year or two. And I think it's a blast. So I'm kind of chatting with them and interacting with them, and they ask me questions. And so things like these abbreviations. What are all these about? So you probably recognize, like probably everybody recognizes at least a few of them. Are there any of them you look at that and you're like, I don't have any idea what you're talking about with that one? Anybody brave enough to say, I don't know what all these are? The G's? That's right. So that's good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on the time of the day. I'll typically always use one of those in a contact. What else do you not recognize? Skip. No. 44 is for the WWFF, so that's the Worldwide Flora and Fauna. I can never say that well, but that's what it is. And so it's a way to sort of say, oh, yep. So it's just a recognition that the people that are in that program, which is mostly a European version of POTA-ish, not exactly, but it's a way for those people to just say, recognizing that you're out, doing some exploration as they sign off. Any others that you don't recognize? Oh, it's 72. 72 started a few years ago. Do you know what it is, Paul? It's the QRP version of 73. So it's kind of a cute way to just, yeah, it's 73, but a little less. Yeah. I know some guys I should be saying 74 because they're cheating. Okay, so you know the rest of them then? Everybody's good, cool with the rest of them? Skip. Yeah. Yep. So if there are two people talking to each other and they're each in a park, so they call that a park-to-park connection or contact. And so in CW, we would just say P to P because we're shortening that up. But a park-to-park contact is kind of cool. You can get extra points for that, or there's awards that build toward the park-to-park concept. So so that's the P to P. And was there another one that somebody didn't know? Oh, good one. That's a good one. So when I was a kid, I'm sorry, what's your call? What's your name? Either one. Dan. So exactly. So Dan, remember, so when we were kids, you would end every CW contact with the old shave and a haircut 2 bits. Dut, 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 dut. Well, over time, even that's been shortened, and now it's just the dit dit. So you will hear in POTA nearly every single CW operator sign off with just a dit dit, but that's what that's reflected. So that, like, this next generation of operators coming up, they never heard the first part. So they don't know what that dit dit is, but I like that history. So that's kind of cool. So all right, let's really quickly, I'll go through, this is short, but it's the anatomy of a CW POTA contact. This was up in, this is Spirit Lake behind me. And yeah, so hopefully you can hear this. You can follow along there. So that's Paul, KJ7DT, who has worked me, I think, 160 times as I've gone out activating parks. He's right at the top of the CW POTA operators. And so we're just doing the exchange back and forth. He's telling me he's in Idaho. Signal report there, 599 signal report. And there's the dit dit. Now, right after the dit dit, there'll be a wave of people coming back to me. It might be 10 people all trying to work me then right after that. So sometimes it's really crazy, but I just want to get an example. Just so you know, when you're out there, you can get this wave of responses coming back. That's kind of analogous to what you might find DXing or contesting. So yeah. Yeah, Skip. I almost never do. If somebody asks me, I'll send it. But when I pull up to the park and I set up all my gear, if I have cell phone access, right before I go on the air, I'll go on my phone and load into the spotting network the park number and all my information, so that as soon as I start making contacts, the reverse beacon network that picks up all the CW operators will pick that up, and it makes the connection. It puts it on the spotting page, so all the hunters see, oh, here's Pat, N0HR. He's at Park Kilo 2281. Boom, it's just in the system for them already. So most people already know where I'm at. Okay, really important question. Yeah. Start off with CQ POTA. Usually I only have to send it about once. I've got it in the memory keyer. I send it once, and then there's a half hour worth of contacts coming back as everybody's hunting me. So yeah. How much equipment is required for POTA? I put a lot of thought into this, and I think I come up with the conclusive answer here that mathematically it works out to whatever you need required for radios is R sub R is your current number of radios plus 1. So whatever you have, make sure you add 1 more, and then you'll be there. And the same with antennas, whatever number of antennas plus 1. And if that math is too complex, then really it's just, here's your answer. And when my wife said she was coming tonight, I modified that slide. So yeah, so really you can start with a fairly simple station. I'd say HF is probably most common for POTA, but it doesn't have to be HF. You can bring a VHF, UHF. You can do satellite contact. There's other ways to do contacts besides HF and a 100-watt rig. And there's low-cost HF rigs too. There's some kind of cute little kits that are under a couple $100 even that people are doing with HF. So mostly CW, but other modes as well. VHF, UHF is fine. No repeaters though. Considerations, you should consider your power, your weight, your functionality, ruggedness. You just want to make sure that you've got all of these factors in mind, and it may take a few cycles of figuring out which combination of gear works best for you for your modes of activation. That is KX3. Yeah, that's one of my favorite radios. I can't imagine ever selling the KX3. So yeah. Actually, this setup right here was one time, I think I tried this a couple times, where I was doing CW on one band from a park while doing FT8 on another band at the same time on a different radio. So having two computers going and different things going on, just to make it interesting. I just kind of wanted to, that's that experimentation, wanted to see if it could be done. Yeah, Clint. That is Big Creek. Do you know the shelter? Do you know the shelter? Yeah, that's the Firefly shelter. I mean, I've been there enough. I know which shelter is which by the picture, but yeah. Love Big Creek. This was a couple weeks ago in northeast Iowa along the river. This is the Palisades Kepler State Park. But I just thought it was a real pretty site with along the river. Gosh, I mean, to get you to get out and activate and take a mostly indoors guy like me and get me to go out and see some stuff has been pretty cool. Yeah. What equipment is required? So let's continue on this thread. You can, in terms of logging, you can log everything if you want to on paper. And then when you get home, type it all into the computer. Just make sure you always capture the person you're working, their call sign, the time that you worked on, what band they were on, and of course get your park number in there. And you can do that. But probably the easiest thing to do, this laptop that I take is a $60 laptop that it's cheap. If I backed over with the car, I'm not going to lose a lot of sleep, but it gets the job done. And there's some apps that support natively POTA pretty well. So, low cost or almost free, some of them. So yeah. Another quick one. This is, we probably know because the call sign's up there. This is at W1AW in Newington, Connecticut, at the ARRL headquarters station. So when we went up to do POTA in New England, we stopped by the league, and you can't really, I did it, I think in the 90s one time on a business trip, and you could take a tour back then and they'd show you all behind the scenes of how they make QST and how the QSL bureaus work. They don't let anybody go back there anymore, but they do still let people go out and operate the memorial station. And so I was on the air for, I don't know, half hour using W1AW as a call and had a blast because they've got great equipment there. So yeah. What equipment is required for antennas? Lots and lots of antennas. You always need more antennas. Consider the location you're going to. Are you going to a place where you're planning to use trees for support? Are they cool with you using trees for support there? Some places aren't. Ground stakes are not always allowed where you're going, so be careful. You're going to put stakes in the ground. Make sure that that's something that's permitted there. I've tried to. There's one park in particular in Iowa, Cedar Point. It's a state park that has a Frank Lloyd Wright house built on it. Cedar Rock. So it's got a Frank Lloyd Wright house that was built on it, and that was donated to become like a museum, but in Iowa, it's a state park. And we actually struck up a conversation very recently with the park manager, and she said, "Hey, we're okay with you guys coming and doing your ham radio stuff here. Just don't put any stakes in the ground." So, okay, so I put that note on that particular, it's over by Cedar Rapids on that site. So if you ever go there, don't put any stakes in the ground. You'll be good. if you're having verticals and you're going to be in high wind, make sure it's not one that will blow over. I probably had my 17-foot whip blow over on a tripod half a dozen times. So what I've started doing is bringing a tool bag and then a tripod case that's got more gear in it, and I kind of weigh down the legs of the tripod. Well, you can see it like right there, so it won't blow over. I could, but that's more stuff to carry. Yeah. 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 Common choices for antennas, of course, these are all the usual suspects that you guys are aware of. Wire antennas of various flavors, coil antennas like screwdrivers or the Wolf River coil, ham sticks for cars, simple verticals with radials, loops and other novelty antennas. I'd still really like, this is why I need one more. So I need one of those hex beam, buddy hex systems, I think would be pretty sweet. Yeah. Yeah, anyway, lots of great antenna choices. All right, Paul, what park is this? It's not, it's west. Not west of Yellowstone, but it's west of here. No, this is kind of a tricky one. They'll probably throw you. So this is Rocky Mountain National Park. If you go to the west side, the west entrance of the park, tens of thousands of acres were destroyed a few years ago by forest fires, and you see the trees all look kind of funky, like all their, what's that? Because of the fires? Yeah, yeah. So this is the west entrance of Rocky Mountain National Park. So on the way into the park, stopped and activated there. Kind of an interesting spot though, with all the damage from the fires. And oh, power, that's a good thing to talk about. Batteries, really pay some attention to weight and form factor. If you're going to fly with it, pay close attention to FAA regulations. So this guy who I've got on the table over here is about as big as you can take, 144 watt hours lithium battery. So don't take anything bigger than that. Pay attention also to your consumption of your rig. And this is, again, getting out and using your gear and getting accustomed to what the consumption looks like. You can buy a simple little meter and monitor that too if you'd like to. And solar. Is solar a good thing for POTA? Pat, who used to work for Power Film, says don't bother, oddly enough. If you're going to be doing POTA for a weekend or 4 days and you're going to be in the middle of nowhere, okay, solar's good. If you're going down to Big Creek for a Saturday afternoon and you're bringing a battery that's that size, there is absolutely no reason to bring solar out there. It's going to be more headache than it's worth. That's my not so humble opinion. How do you call CQ POTA? We talked about that. Just a few more stories, and we're running a kind of right at the finish line here. This is, it is New England. The clue, what's that? Close to Boston. The clue is this ship. No. That's Plymouth Rock, and that's a replica of the Mayflower. So this is Plymouth Rock State Park. It doesn't have a national park there, but just set up on a park bench there. Very simple setup with a QRP rig and knocked out a few contacts, and just a beautiful spot, really. With the boats coming in and out of the harbor, it was a beautiful day. Next one. That is Mount St. Helens. That's right. So the mountain in the background. So what a fascinating park. If you ever get a chance in north of Portland is Mount St. Helens area. Skip, have you been there? Yeah, there's 2 or 3 great museums along the way that the Park Service has set up. One set up by the forestry company Weyerhaeuser that owned a lot, tens of thousands of acres around that area. What a fascinating area, but yeah, what a great place for POTA too. It was really a great spot. Does anybody know the 1968 film Paint Your Wagon? You know the film? So we were this is another one of those happy little accidents. We were in the Portland airport getting ready to go on this Northwest adventure, and they had along the wall of the airport all of the movies that had been filmed in the state of Oregon, and one of them was Paint Your Wagon. Paint Your Wagon was a movie from the late 60s that starred Lee Marvin and Clint Eastwood and Gene Seberg. And it's a musical, comedy, Western, all rolled into one about the California Gold Rush. So it was filmed most of it was filmed in this forest, which is now a national forest in eastern Oregon, near, is it Baker City? Baker City, Oregon. Beautiful, beautiful spot, though. Extremely hard to get to. The directions to get to this place were kind of crazy, and probably 90 minutes or more of driving down these crazy logging roads and trails. And I was very thankful we had a rental car. One of those deals where I don't think I want to take my normal car here, but no cell service for hours, but just about as remote as you could get. The online, when we discovered this place, we said, we got to go find this place. There was a online review with like 4 people had ever been there, and one of them said there was a particularly aggressive rattlesnake at this park. And I said, all right, we're going. So yeah, and my connection to the movie is so Gene Seberg, the actress, was a starlet, very rising, kind of well-known starlet of the day with kind of a tumultuous background. But she was originally from Marshalltown, and her folks lived about a block away from me. Her dad was kind of the local pharmacist, but she became the star of this movie with Clint Eastwood and Lee Marvin back in the day. And it's kind of a fun movie, but yeah, so we had to go find the site, and that's the site. I think the park is called Wallowa Whitman National Forest. Oh, and then as we were driving through some extremely remote area, I think I maybe told Paul about this. This is just what you run into when you go to some of these super remote areas. This is a cattle drive. This is basically your movie City Slickers. They're rounding up cattle, and we were probably stopped there for 15 minutes, but we didn't care. It was fun to watch those cattle dogs and those cowboys round up these cows for this drive. But it's just one of those things that we completely would have never run into some random thing like that had it not been for POTA trying to go from one park to another, literally in the middle of nowhere. I think this is about my final story here. So this is Stones River National Battlefield, and I've been to a few national battlefields as a part of POTA. This is in Tennessee, near Murfreesboro, Tennessee, in central Tennessee. This is that trip we went down to see our daughter and so on. So brought some gear, set up, started making contacts, and was there for a while, and then started packing up. As I'm packing up, see the trail there on the left side. This family walks by with these little kids, and they are all agog over my equipment, and they're asking, how much is that? How much did you pay for that radio? What is this all about? And just curious little kids. And so I talked to them for a little bit, and the kids kind of scurry off, and the mom goes, what is it you're doing here? And I said, well, this is ham radio stuff. She goes, this is really for paranormal stuff, isn't it? And I had a hard time not just busting up laughing, but yeah. Yeah. This is a far northeast Iowa place, kind of up in the Decorah area. Decorah area is a really pretty part of Iowa. There's just some beautiful spots to go do POTA. There's a little town called Bluffton. That's along a little river. The weekend we were there was like 4th of July, and there were kids, college kids, inner tubing everywhere. It was a big party going on. But we were there to do POTA. So we sat up in this little spot, started doing POTA, and it started to rain, and my lovely wife grabbed an umbrella and kept me covered so I could finish the activation out. So maybe that's the most important lesson right there. Have a a spouse who's willing to do that kind of thing for you. So with all of that said, we're at the end, but it's kind of time to ask that question again. You kind of heard about some of the adventures that we've stumbled into as a part of radio, and in particular POTA, just kind of get you to think as you walk away from here, what is your adventure in ham radio? Maybe POTA is something you could go explore. Think about that. If you want to learn more, you can always ask me, but you can go to the parksontheair.com website. There's a Facebook group. There's other ways to get connected with the people that use it. So please give it a thought. So, I hope there's time for questions.
Outstanding. No, we're actually
Out
well
of time.
past
Yep.
our time.
Thanks,
Uh,
everybody.
Thanks, Pat.